Obviously, we're ready to start spring ball on Sunday. The kids have worked hard in the off season. They've done a good job handling the weather and all the things that come with that. I think they're ready to practice. I know our coaches are too. We've had a couple months since the season ended between recruiting and off season and all that sort of stuff. So the kids will be anxious. We'll go 4 practices before spring break, then 11 afterwards, and we'll finish up with our spring game on April 10th in the evening time, weather permitting. We've got a lot of work to do. Obviously, we graduated 8 senior starters on defense and 3 backups. We lost some really good football players. I think our kids are anxious to do their best to fill those shoes on both sides of the ball. Obviously, Brandon Hayes and Al Bond and a couple of our receivers on the offensive side of the ball as well. So we're anxious to go get after it. So please ask any questions you'd like.
Has there really been a break? I mean, it seems we were in Miami and then recruiting. Has there been a break?
Well, there's a little bit of a break. The kids get a break after the game. You know, I mean, we didn't come back to school till a little bit later than we usually do. So they got a little bit of a break there. January 20th was the first day of school, so they got some time off. The coaches got a little bit of time off, but that's the way it's supposed to go. You know, you're supposed to run your season deep into the year and prepare for a bowl game, then enjoy a little bit of time off, and then finish up recruiting and get ready to go. So I think we've put the past behind us, and we're ready to move forward.
I was going to ask you about that. Is that a conversation you had last year? Was great, but that team is not this team.
Well, I think I've tried to use it as a reference point, you know, as of kind of holding those guys up as examples, without beating them over the head with it in the same respect. You know, I think the kids that we have now fully understand the challenge that's in front of us, and that the things that happened last year don't guarantee anything for the upcoming year, and each year is different, and each team is different. But I think it's also important that I highlight the reason that group had success and how they went about their business, and we should try and do our best to kind of emulate that.
With so many big shoes to fill, is this the time that guys need to impress you before you get to fall camp? Do they need to impress you?
Well, to say things are wide open, you know, is an understatement. There's just a whole bunch of guys we've got to get looks at, whether they're guys that we redshirted last year on either side of the ball, or guys that came in at the semester break. So I think those guys. The neat part about where we're at now is those kids have been welcomed with open arms by our current players, and those guys are trying to raise them up to the level that we expect, or that we've tried to set. But there'll be plenty of opportunities for them to do well throughout the spring. There'll be plenty of reps to go around.
How has this off-season and heading into this spring been different than the last 3 years? Roster-wise, and also just the way, you know, the shape of the program?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's been, from a calendar standpoint, it's been pretty much the same. You know, we've done the same things in the morning time. The way we've got our kids together has been about the same. You know, there's obviously some familiar names and faces that aren't in those groups anymore. Some guys that have played a lot of reps, that learned how our program was to be run, and executed that and helped other people do that as well, that aren't in those lifting groups or in those running groups anymore. So I think that's the biggest difference, is the guys that y'all have been talking to for the last couple of years, that were fantastic leaders that we talked about for almost a full year straight in that class, are no longer there. So now there's some younger guys that are kind of put in those roles, and letting them get comfortable in those roles has been the biggest kind of change for us.
With all these new faces, and so what's kind of the learning curve of camp? Like, how advanced are you? How quickly? You know what I mean? Or do you have to kind of go back?
Well, we'll focus the first 4 days primarily on base calls. You know, we will get a little bit into down and distance stuff, but not too much. We'll install 2 areas of special teams in the first 4 days. And then, primarily just normal down and distance type stuff. We won't worry about, goal line or coming off the goal line or, third and or red zone type stuff. Just kind of put everything that we've got in on both sides of the ball and in 2 special teams in the first 4 days. That's primarily based around kind of the core of what we do. But we'll pour it on them. I mean, we're not gonna hold back. I mean, we're gonna go full speed ahead.
Coach, when you look at the calendar year of football, obviously the wins and losses in the fall are most important. Where does this stack up when you take into account fall and then recruiting and then, spring practice and then off-season where they're by themselves? I mean, I know all components are necessary for a winning program, but how important is this period, is these 15 practices?
Well, for me personally, I love spring practice. I just think it's the true essence of coaching. I mean, you're not worried about scheme-specific scouting reports and that sort of stuff. You're truly interested in individual development. And there's some unit development in that as well. But for the most part, it's trying to get individual players better and trying to evaluate those players and see how they fit. So I think it's really important to get those 15 practices in. It's the true joy of coaching. You're good versus good. You're not a lot of scout teamwork. So it's a pretty enjoyable experience, I think, for most coaches. But for us, we have some very fundamental goals that we're looking at from a unit perspective. But it's also quite a bit about individual evaluation and where those guys fit and what can they do. I think it's pretty important to craft in your team.
How did a player like Paxton develop, like maybe last spring and spring of the past 2?
Well, I just think he's continued to, whether it was in the spring, the challenge for him is can he continue to take steps forward? And he has made incremental improvements through 2-a-days or through the springtime or through the summertime. The challenge is, can he continue to do that? Can he continue to make some strides in the weight room, which I think when you watch how he played this past year, along with gaining a little bit of confidence, I think it was there was a visible improvement in his strength level. I think it helped him play better, and I think he recognized that as well, maybe for the first time in his life. I think he really, truly recognized it. So, his challenge is, can he continue to improve from a physical standpoint and also a mental and emotional and a leadership standpoint, whether it's spring practice, 2-a-days, or the summertime.
Should it actually be spring?
I'm ready for it to be. I can tell you that much.
Do you concern yourself with the weather, whether it's going to be rain like it's supposed to be Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, or there's still ice out there?
Well, obviously if there's an issue with player safety, lightning, that sort of stuff. But we're pretty much all weather guys. So if it's safe, it's just cold or just snowy or just hot. If it ever gets there, we're going to go. So,
Coach, how do you choose the spring days? Because I know like Duke is having their spring game tomorrow. I mean, is there an advantage to doing it earlier or later?
Well, there's some people that have talked openly about moving it way up, and there's good and bad to each side of it. In general terms, we have stretched it out as long as possible. For better or for worse, I like having spring break in the middle of it so we can bring guys back if some guy twists an ankle or something. I like having time in between practices. I mean, you can really condense your 15 practices down and get them in really quick. And there's some merit to that as well. But, you're the middle linebacker that you're really trying to look at twists his ankle in the second practice and he misses the next 8. Whereas if you spread it out, he maybe only misses a couple. As far as what Duke's doing with moving it early, if you do get a guy hurt, there's longer recovery time for the next season. The flip side of that is you get a guy that's got to have surgery after the season. You don't get him back for spring ball. I mean, there's a million different ways to look at it. I think it's interesting, and I have looked at the different ways that people are doing it. I think that's a worthwhile study for me to look into. Right now, we feel like it's best for us to do it like this, but it wouldn't surprise me one way or the other if sometime down the road we don't switch it up a little bit too.
Really, there's no concrete way, I guess. 'cause
No, everybody does. A lot of people, not everybody, but there's a bunch of different camps about how to do it, and I think part of it depends on your school year, your school calendar, and that sort of stuff. So I like to have our guys. I like to drag it out for as long as we can per the rules. I also like to have a little bit of time before guys go on the roads to recruit. And I like having spring break in the middle. So for right now, that's kind of where we're at.
When you need an indoor facility to move it up, just to make sure you get.
Well, we would, yes, especially with the weather right now. I mean, you don't want to. It's one thing to say we're going to go if the weather's bad, but go out there and not get anything done. But that would certainly help and aid in your ability to go earlier in the year.
Kind of a broad brush, I guess, but after the spring game, what would you like to look back and say, I wanted to get this done and we did it?
I think there's some young kids offensively that we need to take a good look at and have a feel for what they can and can't do, whether they're skill kids or offensive linemen, have a good feel for that. We need to continue to evaluate the backup quarterback situation. I'd like to hopefully at least have a handle on those guys' skill set more so than we've got now. I'd like for defensively us to continue to develop some leadership back there and, again, know a little bit more about what we've got with some young guys that are either coming off red shirt or have just been introduced into the program. I think those are the big things. And then I'd like our guys to be ready to go attack the next phase, understand how much better you can get from the last day of spring practice to the first day of fall camp and embrace that part of it.
On defense, you lost a lot of leadership there, whether it's people like Bobby or Is that as big a challenge?
Sure. I mean, absolutely. Not just good players, but guys that worked incredibly hard and had some both individual and team success. So, that'll be huge. There's guys in different roles now, and I'm confident we'll have guys that will continue to lead by example and continue to do the right thing and bring people along on that side of the ball. But also, I think it's important that guys on the other side of the ball do that as well. Charles wasn't just a defensive guy. He kind of bridged the gap at times between both sides of the ball. Al Bond was the same way on the offensive side. So it's everybody's job. But we lost good leaders on both sides of the ball, and it'll be everybody's job to step up.
Getting back to the quarterback thing real quick with Paxton. Like with pitchers, there's like a pitch count, right? Do you have then like a certain amount of snaps that you want him to get in? Because you know what he can do by and large. And
Yeah.
you want to see everybody else.
Well, the good thing is we won't hit him, so it's not live reps for him. But for the first 4 days, he'll take pretty much all, or the first 4 practices, pretty much all the reps with the ones. Those other guys will take the reps with the twos. After break, there'll come a time when we'll start to filter those other guys in there with the ones and pull Paxton back just a little bit. Not so much for Paxton as much as it is for the other guys to let them get in there with that one huddle and work a little bit. So, that's kind of the general plan as we get into it with reps. Man, you guys are easy today.
Can you talk about your new coach?
I can, evidently.
Coach Redford?
Yeah.
What do you call him? Redford?
Yeah, Coach Reffett, we're very lucky to get. I've known him for some time. I've coached against him. We played Louisiana Monroe when I was at TCU, and they were an aggressive, physical, tough, hard-nosed defense. We've done quite a few things in the back end over the last couple years, things that Coach Reffett's very familiar with. I think he's going to fit in great from a scheme standpoint. I think he's going to fit in great from a staff continuity, kind of meshing together standpoint. And has always done a great job getting the most out of his players. So we're lucky to have him and Coach Guy on our staff. You look at their resumes and the places they've been and the things they've done for them to come here as position coaches, I think speaks a lot about Galen Scott and the respect they have for him, and speaks a lot about our program and where other people think we're going.
Is there one position, I know you said there's a lot that is wide open, but is there one that you can pinpoint that you're like, oh, wow, I really have no idea, who's going to step up?
Well, I think there's several that we're anxious to see guys play and see what they can do. I mean, you graduate 3 senior corners. That's obviously one. I think we have a pretty good clue for what Dontrell Nelson can do. I mean, we're pretty awfully excited about him at corner. But we'll move a guy or two around to work in some different spots. So, in the secondary, there's some things we'll need to see at corner, and then at linebacker, and then so just kind of an influx of a couple new guys on the defensive line that we're anxious to see as well.
Justin, is there a guy or a couple of guys that maybe we've never heard of, but you've seen them be those guys that have gotten your ones ready, that this is their time to shine? Is there a couple of guys that you and your coaching staff is excited to see get that front line?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. Ty Northern is a guy that redshirted for us last year. That's a junior college kid that redshirted last year that we're going to look at. I think he's a longer guy, can play corner or safety. We're anxious to get him out there. He was a great a great scout team player for us the year before. Jason Neville on offense was a freshman that we redshirted, offensive lineman that I think has turned some heads with his work ethic and his dedication. Now he's still a freshman offensive lineman, but I know he's anxious to get out there and play. And there's several other guys that are new, either redshirted last year or just got here at midterm that we're all anxious to throw them out there and see what they do. I'm tired of watching them run around in shorts and looking forward to seeing them play football, not just jump over bags and run line touches.
Are you as anxious to see Coach Scott kind of step into that role?
Oh, I've seen him before. I know what we've got with that. I've seen him handle the staff before. I've seen him handle the kids before. So that's, I'm pretty at ease with how that, that's not something that I'm anxious just because I'm excited for him to get this opportunity. But I think I know what we've got there.
He'll bring what to that role?
Well, he commands immediate respect from the players. He just has an uncanny ability to touch all different types of players, through different means of motivations from kids from different backgrounds. A fantastic knowledge of defensive football. And then we've surrounded him with a really good staff as well that I think it'll be fun to watch them kind of come together.